Hi everyone, and welcome to A Stitch in Time. Today is Monday, August 10th, 2026, and this is episode 330. I'm Carol, also known as Knits and Pearls on Ravelry, and I live east of Vancouver in the Fraser Valley of British Columbia, Canada, where we are enjoying a pretty nice summer day. There's a good mix of sun and cloud and even a little bit of a breeze. Having said that, it's still kind of warm, so I have my window open to let in a little bit of fresh air. Now, as I've been sitting here getting ready to record, I have noticed quite a few airplanes, which isn't surprising because I do live very close to an airport. But I am hoping that it won't be too noisy and too distracting. I've been toying with the idea of closing the window, but I'd really rather not unless I absolutely have to. And so I'll just kind of monitor things as we proceed and close the window if it comes to that. How are you? I hope you're doing well wherever you are in the world and whatever season you are hopefully enjoying. Yeah, it's been a while since I've put out a regular episode, well over a month actually. Now, most of July was taken up with spinning and Tour de Fleece, and I did put out a special episode a couple of weeks ago chronicling my Tour de Fleece journey. So if that sounds like something you might be interested in, I will put a link in the show notes for that episode. I will put links to all the projects I talk about and other things down below in the show notes. And if you're on YouTube and you're not quite sure how to find those, if you look on the screen below the episode, you'll see something that says more. Click on more and it expands, and that's where you'll find further things about the episode. So around the time that I put out the special episode, I did record a regular episode. In fact, I recorded a regular episode twice in 1 week. So this is my third attempt at episode 330. While I was perfectly at ease discussing all of my crafty endeavors, I really struggled with the life update section. It's been a rather stressful and worrisome last few weeks. And then to top it all off, about a week ago, I came down with quite a bad cold or flu. And you can probably hear it in my voice. Even though I still sound rather congested, because I am, I am feeling quite a bit better, and I wanted to take advantage of my empty house today to record. Yeah, there's that plane. I'll have to see how that goes. My husband Cameron is gone all day and all evening, and so it was the perfect time to not only record an episode but also edit it and get it out to the world. And so I hope you don't mind the little bit of froggy voice that I have today. I have a cup of tea and a whole thing of water to guide me along. This is my Anna's Hummingbird cup. Although it's interesting, Anna's Hummingbirds, their red is actually more of a crimson red rather than a scarlet red. This looks more like the Rufus Hummingbirds that we get, but I still like the cup. We've seen quite a few hummingbirds this summer. Both our neighbors and us have feeders out, and we've quite enjoyed seeing them as regular visitors to our garden. I also have a special planter that has some some flowers that hummingbirds really like, and it's definitely been attracting them, so yay. I feel compelled to point out that as part of the aftermath of my cold, I have some scabbing on my nose, which I have done my best to cover up. So if it looks a little funky there, that's what it is. And can you believe it? A mosquito had the nerve to bite me on my cheek down here, which I have also attempted to cover up. It's itchy and I'm dying to scratch it, but I'm trying to resist. All right. Let's get into the knitting. I toyed with doing life update first and getting it over and done with, but I think I'll just proceed as usual and yeah, and just hope for the best further on in the episode. I have lots of finished projects. That's one advantage to not recording for a while. I have, I think, four finished projects to share with you. So first up are my Tits Up socks. This is a pattern by Nancy Wheeler of the Knit Sip Happy podcast. I've had these on the go for a while, and I'm happy to finally have finished them. I knit these from some yarn from Lily and Pine in their Daylily sock base, and the colorway is Wild Rose. And I really like the way this shows off the stitch pattern. So this is the first of Nancy's breast cancer fundraiser socks, and if this looks like a certain part of the female anatomy, you are quite correct, it is. So I like the way the 1x1 ribbed cuff is banded with the contrast color. And then as you see, the stitch pattern runs down the front of the sock. I substituted an Eye of Partridge heel for just the regular slipped stitch heel. I like the way it looks on solid or semi-solid yarns, and somehow counting the rows in 4s instead of 2s somehow makes the heel go faster. And then again, you have just that little bit of contrast at the toe, and then I did my usual rounded toe. I think Nancy's is a little bit different than mine. Once I kind of got the pattern down, I didn't really have to look at the pattern again. So I really love this yarn with this little bit of green and yellow and pink sprinkles on it. Sprinkles, that's not the right word. But I can't think of what the right word is. Speckles, that's what I'm looking for. Excuse me. I think this one has a little bit more. I find that often happens with hand-dyed yarns, is one end of the skein often has the yarn just a little bit more saturated than the other. I think it's just how yarns are dyed. All right, I also have another finished pair of socks. These are my summer solstice socks, which I cast on June 21st, which was not only the summer solstice, but also Father's Day. And I had purchased this yarn at a fairly new yarn shop in Fort Langley, which is about a 45-minute drive west of where I live. I bought this back at the beginning of May as a souvenir, as part of a special day out that my husband and I enjoyed. And I love how this yarn knit up. The yarn is from Sea to Sky Designs, which is a fairly local to me dyer, and it's the summer solstice colorway, and then it came with a mini in the midnight blue colorway. I had originally planned to do a 1x1 cuff and then go into a 3x1 garter rib, but when I started knitting, because of the busyness of the yarn, it was getting lost, and so I thought, well, I might as well make things easy on myself and just do a plain vanilla sock. So that's what I did. I saved the cuff with its little pop of color there. Again, I don't know if you can see it in this light, but I did an eye of partridge heel and then my usual rounded toe. So love how these turned out. They actually are very similar to my dress that I'm wearing today. But yeah, I can't wait to wear these when the weather gets a little bit cooler. The next finished project I'm going to show you is the Unwinding Hours shawl by Chrissy Prang of Left Side Knits. So I knew I'd had this on the needles for a while, but it wasn't until I was doing show notes earlier today that I realized that I cast this on New Year's Day this year. So it's been a long time coming, over 7 months. And I know what the holdup was. I was trying to determine just how large to make it. The pattern was originally written for hand spun sport weight yarn, I think. Mine turned out to be lace weight. And so I knew I was going to have to knit more pattern repeats than the pattern called for. I just didn't know how many more. And so a few days ago, I took out several traditional triangular shaped shawls I had knit in the past and did my best to compare the size to this one while it was still on the needles and determined that I'd gone far enough. And so I knit the garter stitch border and bound off and proceeded to block it. And even then I was second guessing my decision because while it was on the blocking mats, it looked too small. And I was considering taking out the border and reattaching the yarn and knitting some more pattern repeats. But then once I took it off the blocking mats, again compared it to those other shawls and tried it on, I realized that no, it's a great size. And so it is well and officially done. So I'll give you another close-up look here. It can be difficult on a lace weight yarn because the light wants to shine through, but kind of doubling it over as I show it to you so you can, I think that helps. So the pattern is just alternates bands of stockinette stitch with lace, and then there's a row of purl bumps that separates each section to make them stand out. And then you finish up with a garter stitch border. I did mine with, I think 8 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know, 9 rows, something like that. And then I did the suggested bind off, which I can't remember what it's called, but it's where you knit 2 stitches onto your right side needle, put them back on your left needle, knit them through the back loop, and then continue to do that. I didn't really like the way it blocked out, and I think I would have preferred Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off, but I'm not going to undo it to change the bind off. And there you can see the center point. So all in all, really happy with how this turned out. And the yarn that I used was some hand spun. The fiber was from Fiber Nymph Dye Works. It was a mixed BFL base in her 2024 suicide prevention fundraiser colorway called This Day We Fight. So there's her label. And I had purchased 2 braids. And so if I remember correctly, I took 1 braid, spun it end to end, and then the other I divided, I think, into 2 lengthwise sections, spun them end to end, and then plied them together in such a way then it created a fractal. So I ended up with some sections that were plied upon themselves, like here or here, but also it created some striping where the colors plied with other colors. So the stripes are wider at the top because the rows are shorter, but I think it's nice how it carried on throughout the shawl. So yeah, happy to have that done and happy with how it turned out. So I think I'm going to deviate a little bit from how I usually do things. I do have another finished project to talk about, but it is a result of my Tour de Fleece spinning project. And so I think I'm going to move on to works in progress, and then I'll talk about spinning and my final finished project at the same time. My first work in progress is a pair of socks. Of course it is. I always have to have a pair of socks on the needles. This one I am knitting from this souvenir yarn that I picked up in Calgary, Alberta last summer. It's from Ancient Arts, which is a Calgary-based dyer. And while they do have a brick and mortar shop where you can buy this, they were closed that day, so I got this from a different yarn shop. But this was the August color of the month last year, called Ice Cream Sunday. And since I was traveling in August, I thought that that would be a perfect colorway to get as souvenir yarn. And then I also picked up a mini skein of a coordinating color, and this is called Pumpkin Spice. So I am calling these my Pumpkin Spice Ice Cream Sunday socks, which is a bit of a mouthful, but kind of fun. And then, of course, I had to put this project in my ice cream cone project bag. This is one of the first project bags I ever sewed. And I just thought they all went together perfectly. Now, I'll be honest, I don't really, this does not scream Ice Cream Sunday to me, the colorway. I don't know if it's supposed to be like blueberry topping and chocolate and caramel. I don't know, but it is a fun yarn regardless, and I like how it's knitting up. I just realized it did not mention stitch counts or needle sizes for my other socks. They were both knit on 2mm needles with a 64 stitch cast on, but this yarn is a little bit thicker, so I used 2.25mm needles and cast on 60 stitches, and it's working up great. So as you can see, I have a coordinating cuff and heel And again, I have partridge heel, and then I will probably use the same color for the toe. Haven't decided that 100% yet. Sometimes I just like the way it looks when the cuffs and heels are different. So we'll see. But those are coming along nicely. And then I have pulled a different project kind of out of hibernation. I'm not sure the last time I worked on this, but it is my Blanket of Cheer, which is a years-long project. It's now 3.5 years old. I am knitting blanket squares from leftover Fiber Nymph Dye Works yarns, sock weight yarns. All of my semi-solid mitered squares are from the Bounce base, which I think is an 80/20 superwash merino nylon base. And then my coordinating stripy squares are done from either Bounce or this one. You can maybe be able to see the sparkle. This is the bedazzled base, which has some stellina in it. And then, how convenient, this is the Mountain Tweed BFL base. So when I pulled this out yesterday, I think, I had 3 squares that needed borders put on them. So I'm just using the plain vanilla colorway to do a garter stitch border on each. I used Kay Jones Stitch in Time blanket as a jumping off point, but nothing, I think, other than the number of stitches in the mitered square has any resemblance to it. I kind of did my own thing after that, but that got me started. So I put the border on this yesterday and this one yesterday, and I am currently working on the final one that needs a border. And then I get to make more mitered squares again. So in some cases, I do have semi-solid ones already made. So these 2 are waiting to be knit up with my leftovers of this colorway, which is Under the Party Tree. So I will be doing one with the lavender and one with the pink. In other cases, I just have still some minis waiting for knitting, and then this is a Legacy colorway, and so I'm going to be doing a square with that. I'm going to do a square with my Orange Sulfur Butterfly. So in some cases, oh, and I've got my Swallowtail Butterfly yarn waiting for squares, and some minis waiting to go with them. In other cases, I haven't even knit the socks yet, so I'm gonna just reach over here. I have a heavy basket that I'm storing everything in. So, for instance, I have my mitered squares waiting for this yarn, which is the Atlantic Pub Vibes. In some cases, like this, sorry for the rattling, I have my ruby-throated hummingbird yarn that I haven't even wound up or knit squares for. So I counted it up this morning, and once I finish this border, then I will have 17 more squares that I have to knit. And I'm doing, well, 16 or 17. I'm either doing 63, which will give me a 7 by 9 square size, or 64, which will give me 8 by 8. So I haven't 100% decided, but I've shown these numerous times over the years. So I have bags full of them. They're fun to look at every so often. Last one. So yes, still enjoying this project immensely. Brings me a great deal of joy and cheer to work on. So I did name it my Blanket of Cheer. And I think that's going to be a good project to keep me company for the next little while. One thing I like about it is every little mitered square or every 4 square block, every time you add the border, they're all little milestones to make this one final block or square. And so you get a great deal of satisfaction along the way. And I love seeing how the stripes knit up and play with the colors that I've chosen for the mitered square. And I do have all of that figured out. I have written down a list of all the semi-solid colorways I have, and I've already figured out which colorways are going with them. And so that's also very satisfying to check off each block as it's completed. So great project. I work on it for a while, and then I'm happy to put it away for a while, but every time I bring it out, it just brings me a lot of joy. So it's a good one for right now. Okay, so I'm just gonna pause for a sec, clean up a little. I just dropped a skein of yarn on the floor. Actually, what I'm gonna do before I do that, I'm just gonna show you my one and only acquisition. There are more on the way. True confessions. In fact, while I was recording, I saw a notification come up for shipping. So next time I'll have some more things to show you. But I did piggyback on my daughter-in-law's order to Gauge Dye Works and bought this skein of sock yarn called 76, and there are 76 little rainbow stripes in this sock, and it's the round trip version, so there are 2 identical stretches of yarn. So I can either make 2 identical socks, or I could copycat what a sample sock from the Gauge Dye Works website, and I'll put it up here, in which they went through each color once between the 2 socks, and then added white coordinating or contrasting heels, toes, and cuffs. So I haven't 100% decided yet, but I think this will also bring me a lot of cheer when I cast it on. Okay, I'll be back in a minute to talk about Tour de Fleece and spinning. Because I did discuss my Tour de Fleece plans in my last regular episode, and because I have an entire episode devoted to Tour de Fleece, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on spinning on this episode, but I will just briefly remind you of what my goals were and bring you up to date on my status. So my secondary goal was to spin yarn for a pair of socks using the 3-ply 2 ways method. So that involved taking a braid of fiber, dividing it in 2 lengthwise, spinning the first half end to end and chain plying it, which keeps the colors together. and then dividing the second half into 3 lengthwise, spinning them separately, and then plying the 3 together in a regular 3-ply. And then once both skeins were completed, my plan was to knit a pair of socks and stripe the 2 skeins. I didn't get very far. I did prep all the fiber, and once my sweater spin, my other goal for Tour de Fleece, was complete, I did start spinning for my socks on my traditional wheel. I have an Ashford Traveler. Unfortunately, I was finding it jerky spinning it. It was like the take-up was jerking, and I tightened things and loosened things and cleaned everything, and I came to the conclusion in the end that I think I need a new drive band. I think mine might be stretched. I don't know the last time it would have been changed. I have a well-used wheel, and I don't know when that was last changed. So I may transfer this spin over to my e-spinner, my electric spinner, but for now I haven't even touched it since then, so it's still sitting on my traditional wheel. So I was spinning up some fiber from Bramble Ridge. It's the South Down sock, which is 75% South Down baby doll, 12.5% alpaca, and 12.5% bio nylon in the Tide Pool colorway. And so you see I have one big ball of fluff, that's for the chain ply skein, and then I have 3 smaller balls of fluff for the traditional 3-ply. So I would like to get back to that soon. I've just been caught up in other knitting and haven't spun since I started that sock spinning. That's at least 2 weeks ago. Okay, as for my main Tour de Fleece project, I had recently purchased this book, Yarnitecture by Jillian Moreno, and when I saw this sweater in it, the Tetris Pullover by Julia Farwell Clay, I knew I wanted to spin yarn for it and knit it. I'll just give you a quick look at the back. And so I ordered 4 braids of BFL Tussa Silk from Bramble Ridge. And I got them the same time as I ordered the yarn for the fiber for the socks. And this was the oil slick colorway. I'd had previous experience with this blend. BFL stands for Blue Faced Leicester, and I had previously purchased 2 different braids of this fiber from Bramble Ridge and combined them to make the yarn that I used to knit this Traveler Cowl by Andrea Mowry. So I not only loved the way the yarn spun up, I also liked the way it knit. It felt really good, and I liked how the yarn knit up. And so I thought it would be the perfect blend for the sweater. And I based my yardage off of the yarn I had spun for this, which turned out to be a little bit of a mistake. I should have ordered 1 extra braid. So I took the fiber, I had 4 braids, I divided each braid into 2 lengthwise, and then again into 2 horizontally. So I ended up with 4 sections for each braid. I took one section from each braid, spun 2 end to end on one bobbin, spun 2 on end to end on the second bobbin, plied them together. So in the end I had 4 skeins of 2-ply yarn, which all contained yarn or fiber from each braid. So I wanted to make sure, even though they looked very similar laid out, I wanted to make sure that the colors were spread equally across each finished skein of yarn. And this is what I have left of the yarn. So I ended up with a really good balance of sections that where the colors plied upon themselves. So we would have, for instance, a length of brown yarn, and then also sections where two colors barber poled together, like you can see here. And that was what was desired for this sweater. I knit it up. Maybe what I'll do right here is just pop in a video of the sweater as I'm wearing it. So I did choose which skein of yarn I knit up where with a great deal of thought. Skein 3 turned out to be quite different from the other 3 skeins, just the way the colors were distributed and with the way that they spun up and barber poled. And so I used skein 3 for the lower back. I used skeins 1 and 4 for the front, and then skein 3 for the upper back and for the sleeves. And you should have, will have seen that now, I think, if I'm judging my timing right. And then you can see, here's the sweater with me holding it up here. So it's a little bit lighter just because of where it's close to the phone camera, but that gives you an idea of all the different colors that are in it. So it's a modular construction. You start with this rectangle down here, pick up alongside, knit this section, and then you knit out from here for the rest of the front. The sweater is, as written, is knit with a front, a back, 2 sleeves that are all sewn together, but I didn't see why I couldn't knit them all together seamlessly. So I knit the lower front section, and then I picked up along the edge of this section here on the left front as it's worn, left lower front, and then I worked my way across the back. It's hard to tell a lot of the times, but there's a combination of textures also. So I don't know if you can tell, but the center section of the back is done in garter stitch. The rest is stockinette. And then once you're done that, you pick up along the top of the front and along the top of the back and work your way up. So this one is knit again with a section of garter stitch that forms a border, and whereas the back, it's just a garter stitch and then stockinette stitch stripes. After you do that, well, after I did that, I picked up around the neck edge, did the little bit of garter stitch that's required. Then I did the bottom hem. Again, garter stitch along the bottom. And then I knew whatever I had left, I could put into the sleeves. And that's what I ended up doing. I had, as you can see, I had a little bit of yarn left over, but I didn't want the sleeves to extend past my elbow since they were only gonna go like that far. It was either gonna be bracelet or like right down to my cuff or like 3/4. I didn't want something weird and in between. So that's what I had enough yarn for. And it actually reminds me of this sweater that I knit 13 years ago called Miranda by Jose Pacan. I'll see if I can get the iPad here without too much glare. I look so much younger. So I know there's reflections on it, but it was purposely knit with short sleeves, purposely designed with short sleeves. And actually for our climate, it's a really good type of sweater to have because I can wear a t-shirt or a shirt underneath and not have such a heavy long sleeve sweater because I don't get to wear a heavy long sleeve sweater very often in our climate. And so I think it will probably get more use being a short sleeve sweater than a long sleeve in the long run. Which is not to say I'm not considering knitting it again and making sure I have enough yarn to do long sleeves. It was really fun. Once I had done the bottom hem, I picked up around the armhole and knit my sleeves out rather than knitting them separately and sewing them in. So yeah, very easy to adapt to make it seamless and really fun to make. Couldn't put it down. That's all I wanted to work on. And thankfully, I know I mentioned my last episode, maybe even, I guess it was my last episode, I had issues with my arm and shoulder because I had overused them knitting a cotton sweater. The name of it is escaping me. Oh, I have my show notes book right in front of me so I can look. The Sailoress Top by Joji Locatelli. So I'm gonna just have to, I've got low power mode coming up, so I'm gonna take a break here in a sec and plug my phone in so I can continue recording. In any case, I was worried about Tour de Fleece and how much that the spinning would aggravate that, and knitting also, so I had to definitely pace myself. I'm happy to say, like, now I'm back to knitting basically as much as I want to. My arm isn't bothering me at all. So that's a good thing. All right, I'm gonna go plug this phone in so it can charge while I chat with you. And let's see if I can get through live chat more easily this time around, because I'd really like to get an episode up. I did end up closing that window after all. There were sirens going off and I could hear my neighbors chatting, so I thought maybe it'd be better off closed for the rest of the episode. It was July 4th when I put out my last regular episode, so I thought I would start out by telling you about some good things that have happened since then. As I already mentioned, I spent a good part of the first few weeks of July participating in Tour de Fleece and spinning up the yarn for my sweater. So I got a great deal of joy out of that. Near the beginning of the month, we had an extra long weekend up at the cabins. We had previously arranged with some extended family that were going to be there at the time that we could come up and have a little bit of a work weekend. And so Cameron and I and my oldest sister went up together, picked up my mom in town and brought her out with us. And then we had 4 days up there. It's true, many hands make light work. So we had a really good combination of work and play and visiting. And it was really great to see some cousins from both Alberta and British Columbia that I don't get to see very often. So that was a lovely weekend. The weather was perfect. Later that week, after we got home, we had our granddaughter stay over for a couple of nights. She came home with us after the Wednesday night ball game, and then the day that she was due to go home, Cameron went and picked up our grandson, her older brother, and we all went swimming and went out for lunch and then had some time together before their mom, our daughter, picked them up on her way home from work. So that was fun. The following weekend was Cameron's year-end ball tournament, so ball is all wrapped up for another season. The tournament itself was quite fun. They got knocked down from B division to C division for the tournament, so their games were more competitive. Highlight, they did finally win a regular season game. I think it was the second to last game that they played. And so they played in B division all year, and they're not a B division team. So luckily, happily, they will be going back to C division for next year. So anyway, for the tournament, they won their first game on Saturday, lost the next two games, and then lost their Sunday morning game. And I think most people were pretty happy not to have to continue to play on Sunday because the weather had taken a turn for the worse, and it was raining. And so I, for one, was quite happy to have the rest of the day off. Truth be told, I didn't really want to be at the ballpark at all that weekend. There were some things going on and I was distracted and just really not in the mood for ball. But I do scorekeep for the team and felt obligated to be there. This is the point during past attempted recordings where I have struggled. I get tongue-tied, my mouth gets dry, and I have difficulty relaying things in a concise and straightforward manner. But I am determined to plow ahead. I have refilled my water, and I'm really hoping that I can get through this without quite so many do-overs as I've had to do in the past. Just over a week prior to the ball tournament, a wildfire broke out close to where our cabins are located, only about 2 or 3 miles away as the crow flies. The fire was started by lightning on the side of a steep mountain just above a small lake. And so land access was difficult, to say the least, but they did get on it right away with helicopters with water buckets. My cousins were still at the cabins at the time, and one set of cousins was leaving a couple of days later anyway, but some of the others decided to cut their holiday short and head home a few days early. Our vacation property and other properties in the area were put on evacuation alert a couple of days after that. And some properties closer to the fire were put on evacuation order. Even so, at the time, even though we were monitoring the situation, I didn't feel any great sense of panic. I think that was partly because my mom had been in touch with someone who lived much closer to the fire, who had remained behind despite an evacuation order because she didn't feel like the fire was an imminent threat at that time. She could see the fire from her home, could see the helicopters working on it, and even though it had grown some, she, like I said, she didn't feel like she was in any great danger. So I think that helped to influence my attitude towards the fire. I think the day after the evacuation order went into effect, my sister and her husband went up to the cabins to retrieve their travel trailer, which they had left up there a few weeks earlier, just in case. And before they left, they did gather a few precious things from the cabins, mostly old original photos, and they dropped them off at my mom's on their way home. One of my cousins had also brought some things into her place on his way home a couple of days before that. That evening, they could see the fire from the end of our property, and my brother-in-law said that's when he really started to feel more concerned, and they were glad to leave the next morning. Shortly after they left my mom, just a few hours later, an evacuation alert was issued for Clinton, the village where she lives, which is located about 10 miles or 17 kilometers east of where our cabins are located. But that evacuation alert was largely put in place because of another wildfire that had been burning north of town. But it had largely been moving away to the north, away from town. And so my mom also didn't feel like she was in any great danger at that time. And she hadn't packed anything, and so she didn't really consider going home with my sister and brother-in-law. When the evacuation order when the evacuation alert went in place a few hours after that, she said that she would pack her bags, but she really didn't want to leave unless an order came through. She was evacuated back in 2017 when a wildfire approached from the south and had spent several weeks away from her home, going from daughter to daughter to daughter to daughter. And I'm sure that those memories were fresh in her mind. There was a meeting scheduled for the next evening at the village hall with information about the fires and a potential evacuation. But Mom said at the meeting everyone seemed pretty chill. They had people from the village and the regional district and the wildfire service all talking, but nobody gave any sense that this was going to happen anytime soon. However, things really changed that evening. After the meeting, everything accelerated. We have good friends who live about halfway between the cabins and town. And when they got home from the meeting, they called my mom to let her know that they could now see the fire from their home. And I don't know if it was hearing that or if she'd already made up her mind, but my mom arranged for my sister and brother-in-law to return the next morning to pick her up and take her to their house. She had everything packed she needed to pack, and I think she thought it was wise to get out ahead of any potential chaos that might arise from a mass exodus should an evacuation order be put in place. And we're just really glad she made that decision. That night at 11 o'clock, an evacuation order did go into effect for properties, rural properties between the fire and the village, which included our vacation property and our friend's home. And then by the time Mom and my sister and brother-in-law were leaving town the next morning, an evacuation alert was put in place for Clinton itself. And so it was good for them to be able to get out ahead of any sort of rush. And then by that evening, the fire had reached the village itself. And somewhere in between, it had split in two, and one tongue, fork, whatever you call it, went south of town, and the other went north. That would have been Friday evening. And then sometime the next day, Saturday, the one that had gone north merged with the already existing fire that had been north of the village. Had a lot of calls and messages on Saturday, checking to make sure my mom was okay as the fire hit the news. And we were all frantically checking the Wildfire Service website and news reports and just trying to get a sense of how extensive the fire was. We learned pretty quickly that there was some structure loss, including some businesses and homes south of Clinton. And then Sunday morning, this has been the hardest part. Sunday morning, our friends phoned my mom to say that they had lost their place completely. I've seen a photo and it was just incinerated. Sunday afternoon, we saw that the new wildfire map showed the fire perimeter going through a corner of our vacation property. And so we had an anxious 24 hours before a new map emerged with a new fire perimeter further away. And then we also heard through the grapevine that the fire didn't get that far. The village itself was largely okay with very little structure loss or damage, so Mom's place is okay. But I will say it's that whole idea of survivor guilt is a real thing. It doesn't somehow seem right that our cabins, which they're just cabins, they're very rustic, but they're a luxury nevertheless. It doesn't seem right that they should be okay and other people have lost their homes. But of course you don't get to decide those things. It's not over by a long shot. The fire is still out of control. It's now almost 148,000 hectares. That's combined with the already existing fire, but even so. So it's going to be a while still till Mom can get back home. They just restored power to the area a couple of days ago. And so that's good news that we now have power, but there'll be fridges and freezers to be dealt with when we return, both to Mom's place and the cabins, because they've not had power for over 2 weeks. So everything will have spoiled. But for us, it could be so much worse, and we're very grateful for that. We're still not breathing a complete sigh of relief. A couple of days ago, we noticed that there's still an active fire burning just a couple of kilometers from our vacation property. And then there's one to part of the northwest corner of the fire to the north of us is now starting to funnel down the road that we're on. Now we're still 20 plus kilometers away from it, but I've seen how those winds work, and what happened 2 weeks ago is a perfect example of how quickly wind can take a fire. So until that thing is out and we are allowed back home, or back to our second home, I just won't breathe easy. There are some other terrible fires happening in BC and of course in other places. It's been a very harsh wildfire season, and we're just in August. Usually this is the peak of it. So yeah, it's tinder dry out there and no rain in sight. And there are a number of challenging wildfires happening right now. And in other parts of BC, there's been severe loss of homes and structures. So if you happen to be in one of those affected areas, I just send you best wishes and feel super grateful that so far anyway, we're one of the lucky ones. I'm going to take a sip and continue a little bit. The wildfires also had an effect on our holiday plans this year. We were going to spend several days over the BC Day long weekend at the cabins. That was not just this past weekend, but the weekend before. And then on the following Tuesday, we were going to head out with my mom for a week-long road trip. We were going to go north to Barkerville, which is a living history site based on a gold rush town. And Cameron's sister lives close by, so we were going to see her. And then we were going to head out to the coast to Bella Coola and do a boat tour there before taking the ferry across to Vancouver Island, where we were going to do some whale watching and also visit with both of Cameron's brothers. So we were due to return home tomorrow. It didn't take much of a discussion to determine that it would be best to cancel our plans. Not only was Mom obviously evacuated from her home and not really in vacation mode, but we were also concerned about the potential of being trapped by another wildfire. So it's disappointing, of course, but in relation to the problems that other people have at this time, it's a small one. And then in retrospect too, both Cameron and I ended up sick through the vast majority of his holiday time that he had booked off from work. And so we weren't really up for a vacation, as it turns out anyway. As we were going through the week and picturing where we were supposed to be and thinking, I don't think I could have stood X amount of hours in the car today, or wouldn't really feel like doing, Barkerville feeling like this today. Plus, we wouldn't have wanted Mom stuck in the car with the two of us and, giving her our germs. So in retrospect, it all worked out for the best, but it's still disappointing, obviously. I always like to leave my episodes on a high note with something good, and this episode I have 3 things. Good thing number 1 is that we celebrated our 42nd wedding anniversary a couple of weeks ago. I feel very lucky to have Cameron in my life, and I would do it all over again, given the chance. Good thing number 2, we were really hoping that since the 3 of us were supposed to have been on a holiday this week, that we would have the opportunity to go on an outing with my mom. And since we were feeling quite a bit better by Saturday, we arranged to go to Fort Langley for the day. So Fort Langley is a small town located about 45 minutes west of here. And not only does it have lots of cool shops and restaurants, it's also the site of an old fur trading post, which has been restored as a historical site. And I found out that neither Cameron nor my mom had ever been there. I've been there several times on field trips, both as a student and a mom, but I hadn't been for a long time. So we all quite enjoyed wandering through and getting a sense of what it would have been like in the 1850s. On my mom's side of the family, we do have fur trading ancestors, and in fact, two of them would have passed by this region and stayed at the fort in 1828. So that made it just that much more special to be there with her. And then after that, we went and had lunch, wandered through some shops, and then on our way home, we stopped at our son and daughter-in-law's place for happy hour, and then we all went out for dinner, and then went back to their place for one last bit of a visit before heading home. It was a long day. Cameron and I were both really tired when it was done, but I'm so happy we got the chance to do that. And good thing number 3, of course, has to be that my mom is safe and well, and she has a house to go home to. And it does not escape us how very lucky she is compared to a lot of people this summer who have lost their homes, including, of course, our good friends. And we're super thankful for that. And that brings this episode to a close. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. They're two different things, and I appreciate both. Take good care, and I hope to see you again very soon. Bye for now.